All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Greenblatt. Welcome to today's Onboard workshop. I'm going to get started in just a second. Just waiting for everyone to get into the webinar. Hopefully everybody can hear me right now. Everybody can see my screen. This session is being recorded. Just for my own peace of mind, if you want to chat in, you can. I see somebody already said hi, Michelle, so hello. But if you want to chat in, just yes, that you can see my screen, you can hear me okay. Again, everyone's microphones should be muted, but if you do have questions throughout the presentation, I highly encourage you to chat them in to your GoToMeeting control panel. A little background on myself. As I said, my name is Michelle. I graduated from the University of Pennsylvania in 2014. I worked at a private investment partnership in New York shortly thereafter. It was all long, just buy and hold. And then after that, I worked at a technology startup company in Philadelphia before joining Chaikin. At Chaikin, I'm part of our client success team. We have an extremely dedicated team. And our main role is to work with our subscribers to ensure that you guys are all profitable in your investment in Chaikin and that you understand to use all the functionality to your benefit. I've been closely mentored by both Joe Bacella and Mark Chaikin, who I'm sure you recognize, and we absolutely enjoy working as part of this team. For the purpose of today, pretty much this is your onboard workshop. We have it every day at 2 p.m. and the main goal is to establish a consistent and disciplined strategy for using Chaikin. So if you're a new subscriber or a returning subscriber and you really just want to solidify kind of your step-by-step routine for using Chaikin on a daily basis to achieve your investment goals. So a basic kind of overview of how the presentation will play out. First and foremost, we always recommend evaluating the overall condition of the market. So we'll go through that step by step. And then we'll go through evaluating stocks as well as a tour of Chaikin Analytics, all the features, what everything does. And then at the end, we'll host a live Q&A session. So as I mentioned, please feel free to chat in if you have any questions as we go through, and I would be happy to answer them in our session afterwards. I'll bring up a live demo of the platform as well so we can go through specific stocks or anything that you might like. Before I do get started, I want to draw your attention to the Resource Center. If you log into your Chaikin account, you'll see in the upper right-hand corner next to your email, there are three symbols. The small envelope will tell you about any product updates. The stack of books in the middle will allow you to access the Resource Center and the user guide. As I said, the session is being recorded, so should you want to watch the recording later or see recordings of our other presentations, you would simply click Resource Center, and then under educational webinars, it'll say subscriber session recordings. And then immediately beneath that, there will be a link to register for future sessions. And these future sessions would be the sessions located here on this calendar. All the times are Eastern time. And just a brief description of each one. Our pre-market session occurs on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. For subscribers who feel like they've really solidified the methodology but still want to stay engaged and see our take on an in-depth analysis of the market, where it's been and where it's likely to head, I highly recommend attending this session. If you're on the West Coast and you don't want to wake up that early, it is always recorded and you can always access it in the Resource Center. If you are an experienced options trader or just learning about them now and interested in learning more, I also highly recommend attending our options session. That's 11 a.m. Eastern every Tuesday and Thursday. What we do is we go through the best practices of using options play, which is the module that we partnered with within Chaikin, and we go through some good options candidates. As I said, this is our daily workshop. We have it every day at 2 p.m. Eastern. And if you're a new subscriber and you want to attend this a couple of times, I highly recommend doing that as well. When I first started here, I watched it every day. And I found that each time I watched it, I learned something different. Finally, last but not least, every Monday at 4:15, we have our open forum session with John Schlitz. He's our chief market strategist, and you would recognize him from your morning insights emails that he sends out every trading day. He gives excellent technical analysis. We have some very devout followers of his commentary, but basically the format is we do a market overview, and then it's kind of like a giant Q&A session. So I highly recommend attending that as well, especially if you're a big fan of John's type of analysis. I would love to also hear from you. This presentation, it's a small group, it's really for you, especially at the end, at the Q&A session. I can go over some specific examples for your type of strategy. So if you go ahead and chat in right now, what you prefer to trade or invest, if you're more interested in buying and holding stocks, you like options, or you're specifically looking for stocks that have a high yield or, a good dividend return, as well as your time horizon. We find that all of our subscribers kind of span a wide breadth of preferred time horizons. If you've seen Sandy's webinars, she's more of like an intermediate to long-term a buy and hold investor, but we have a lot of people who are also interested in swing trading and looking to enter and exit a position within 1 to 3 weeks. So go ahead and chat in. That way I can kind of tailor the examples we go in afterwards. Cool. I see somebody's interested in options and some specific options vertical strategies like butterflies and condors and all these other types of things that you can also look into in options play. All right. Thank you guys for chatting in. So let's get started in our methodology. So first and foremost, we always emphasize that it is crucial to evaluate the overall condition of the market before you even think about evaluating stocks or entering a position. How do we do that? There's these 3 kind of sub-steps, and I'll go through them kind of carefully now, but the whole point is that this is going to be a really efficient process for you in the future. Sandy says that it only takes her 15 minutes a day to kind of evaluate the market and check on her portfolio or her watch list, and it really can be that easy. But it is definitely something that takes practice, especially if you're new to Chaikin and new to investing. So the 3 steps that we like to go over, first we want to understand the charts, right? So we want to understand all the technical indicators, what they're telling us, and what we can actually glean from them looking at the SPY, which I'll get into in a moment. We also like to integrate that with the spider sector rating, so how each sector has been performing, and compare and contrast that with what we see technically in the SPY overall. And then finally, we want to tie it all together with market insights, and that's the expert analysis commentary that we get from Mark Chaikin. He sends his newsletter out every Sunday. I'll get into each of these steps in just a moment, but that's kind of your checklist of things that you want to do to make sure that you have a good idea of how the market has been doing and where it's likely to go. If you are interested in learning more about the Chaikin methodology, as I said, this is our daily workshop, and I'll go over everything somewhat briefly, but this is going to be the most in-depth and comprehensive educational offering that we have. We actually just debuted it this past week and got a really, really positive response from our subscribers. We're having another one in about 2 weeks, and I believe another one the first week in June. So if you'd like to learn more, I highly recommend it. Just follow the link that you see here. It's www.chaikinanalytics.com/academy if you want to learn more about the curriculum, or if you'd like to even register for a session now. All right, so let's get started with our market analysis. First, we want to assess the technicals. We're looking at the SPY, which is the ETF for the S&P 500. The reason that we look at that is because it's a great indicator of the market health overall. Before I go into kind of interpreting this chart, I want to make sure that everybody knows what we're even looking at. So if you're a new subscriber and you're unfamiliar with this format, I'll just quickly go over everything that you see. Each vertical green line is an individual day, so that represents one trading range for one particular day. If you click the crosshair symbol in between the 1 and 5 year view and the EPS toggle, you'll be able to see the details for that day. So you could see the high, the low. A lot of people ask about candlesticks. We don't actually have that available currently, but it is something that we're looking into. But that's kind of as close as you'll get to it, right, in terms of seeing more details on the trading range. Then you'll see these 3 white dotted lines. The top and bottom white dotted lines are going to be your Chaikin bands. Those are volatility bands, very similar to Bollinger Bands or Keltner channels if you're familiar with using those. They're measured around the middle white dotted line, which is a 21-day exponential moving average, so a short-term average. And the way that we use these volatility bands to get a good prediction of where the price is likely to head is that the closer that the green price bars get to the top band, the more likely they are to dip back down, and the closer they get to the bottom band, the more likely they are to go back up. Finally, we also have our orange line here that's in bold. It's our 200-day double exponential moving average, also known as the long-term trend line. And the way that we interpret that is generally if we're looking for a bullish outlook on a stock or ETF, we like that long-term trend line to be rising, and we like the price bars to be above it. So above a rising long-term trend. Towards the bottom here, we have a couple categories, and some of them are grayed out, but first is Chaikin money flow. That is what Mark Chaikin is possibly most famous for inventing in the 1980s. It's a calculation of price and volume, mainly looking to measure institutional investment. So large periods of green would be periods where institutions are investing heavily, and periods of red would be where institutions are selling. Our overbought, oversold indicator is stochastic. It's an 100-point scale, but these 30 and 70 marker lines here are just simply to serve as a reference. But what we like to say is that our overbought, oversold indicator kind of works in tandem with our Chaikin bands. They're kind of a dynamic duo. So the way that we would interpret this is when it goes above the 70 marker line, it's overbought. When it goes below the 30 marker line, it's oversold. So if we see that the overbought, oversold indicator is overbought, and the price bars are also close to the top band, we know that it's more likely to dip back down. And conversely, if it's below the 30 marker line, so very oversold and also close to the bottom band, we know it's likely to go back up again. It doesn't always exactly work like this, but actually you'll see that they do usually work in tandem. And the reason that that's important is if we evaluate our current situation where we might be short-term oversold and close to the bottom band, we might have some confidence that it's likely to go back up again, if not a huge move up, but at least somewhat. The other two things that are grayed out here are the relative strength versus the SPY. So if you were looking at a stock, it would be telling you how that stock is performing in comparison to the SPY, to the S&P 500, the market overall. So you'll see that when we analyze some stocks. And then finally, the power gauge rating. So that is also going to refer to individual stocks. However, we will have a power gauge rating for ETFs coming in the next couple of weeks. We're very excited about it. It's currently in testing, but we do have it. We just want to make sure that every single aspect of it is perfect before we release it to all of our subscribers. But we're very, very excited about that new development. And just to evaluate kind of the shapes that we see here and what we can expect for the future just from looking at the technicals on the chart. What you see are these two W-shaped bottoms, also known as market corrections. We saw one from last fall, beginning in August, and also at the beginning of this year. And at a first glance, I think that they look very similar, but when we actually kind of dig deeper into them, we find that there are some significant differences. So out of the W-shaped bottom last fall, we saw that money flow had a sharp rise and then a sharp dip back down. The reason you would be hesitant about that is while it's great to have a spike up, it's not necessarily sustainable. Whereas the money flow coming out of the market correction this year was much more gradual, consistent, and stable. And that's something that we really like to see, that big institutions are consistent with their investment patterns. And it looks to be continuing to be stable. Since we are short-term oversold and close to that bottom band, there is reason to believe that we will pick back up again. That said, it's very important to keep in mind our levels of support and resistance. What I mean by that, short-term support are going to be your short-term bottoms, and your resistance are going to be your short-term tops. So resistance levels have been mostly in this 210 range. Unfortunately, we have not been able to break through them, but if we were able to break through, that would be a very bullish indication for the future. I'll get into this later, but Mark really indicated that we're going to stay in this trading range. So even if we're short-term oversold, if there are increases, they are likely to be in this trading range between our support and resistance levels. So that is that for the technicals. Now we also want to tie that together with our spider sector analysis. So if I actually just go to the left-hand side of my screen, I click ETFs and then spider sectors. If I click this white triangle with a circle around it, I'll be able to see these power bar differentials. And the reason that these are important is to see overall how the different sectors are doing, whether they're improving or kind of staying the same. And what we've seen since our February 11th low is that a majority of the sectors have seen improvements in their power bar ratios, so the number of bulls to bears respectively. So if a majority of the sectors have positive differentials and that ratio is continually improving, then that's a sign that there is some support for a bullish outlook on the market. That said, you also want to pay attention to the differences between the sectors, that some may be more bullish than others, and you would want to look to those sectors that probably have the most positive differentials for candidates for classic bulls. So recently, financials and healthcare have been outperforming, utilities as well, but there are concerns it might be a little bit overextended, whereas consumer discretionary, consumer staples have been underperforming slightly. Although actually this might be a little bit outdated. Consumer staples might be doing better now. Anyway, if you wanted to get a more in-depth kind of look at each sector and its performance, as well as the top holdings, you could do so in our new sector view. This is something we debuted just a couple weeks ago, and another example of how we're constantly innovating around our subscribers and what they want. We always want to be delivering more information so that you can make the best investment decisions possible. So I highly recommend checking this out, clicking around. You can kind of test it out, but it will definitely give you a more clear picture on the differences in the sectors and their internal performance as well. Finally, after we've analyzed the technicals integrated with the spider sector analysis, we want to tie it all together with our expert analysis. And what I have here is kind of this crude drawing that I just made to be helpful. But if you'll recall, that stack of books was the middle symbol where we would access the resource center. To the left of that, there's a light bulb symbol. If you actually just click that light bulb symbol, you'll have immediate access to both market and morning insights. Normally, these are emailed to you, but if you're anything like me, you get a ton of emails and you don't want to filter all through them. So I actually prefer to look at it in this light bulb view because I can easily compare and contrast John's article, from this morning with Mark's article from last Sunday, or I can compare and contrast Mark's different articles, even look at his different stock of the week picks, things like that. But the main thing here is that both Mark and John have collectively each, I think, 50 plus years of Wall Street experience. So they're obviously very, very educated and familiar with market trends. But what they do is they distill a tremendous amount of this information into what I think is a fairly concise and easy to understand document. I highly recommend reading these. Definitely market insights, morning insights, if you kind of just are able to skim it or look at it every once in a while, it's absolutely essential. All right, so what I have here are two kind of snippets from last Sunday's article. It kind of just reiterates what I mentioned about the short-term support and resistance, which you can see here. He talks about the outperformance of the equal-rated RSP. So what that means is instead of it being weighted based on the different respective sizes, or I guess market cap of the different stocks, it would be equal rated. So if the RSP is outperforming, that means that a wider breadth of stocks are doing well, which is something that we like to see, that more stocks are participating in the rally. But again, resistance in that 2,135 area does remain a challenge. And again, he talked about earnings season having a tremendous impact on markets as well. He predicted that it was going to be tough for retail this week, and he was pretty accurate. Nordstrom got beaten down yesterday. A bunch of these retail stocks have not been having an easy time. But there are 10 days left, so continues to have an effect and should be an interesting thing to watch in the next couple weeks, well, I guess next week. All right, so that is our market analysis. And the reason that this is important is we want to make sure that before we enter a position that one, it's a good time to be doing so, and two, that we have kind of reasonable expectations of where the market's headed, depending on what type of position we take, right? So, if you have reason to believe that there's a bullish outlook, as the saying goes, a rising tide raises all ships, it would be a good time to look for bullish candidates. And the opposite would be true if you have a bearish outlook and are looking for bearish candidates. It also depends on your time horizon as well. All right, so in terms of our stock analysis, we like to break it down into two steps. First, we want to qualify the stock. We want to determine whether or not the stock is worth looking at in general. And then we also want to establish our timing. So even if we find a great stock that satisfies all the criteria of a classic bull, if you buy it when it's overbought or just at a poor time in general, it can definitely lead to your downfall. So very key to keep that in mind. So when we think about qualifying a stock, we like to analyze this Finding Long and Short Ideas document. This can also be found in the Resource Center. You would just click Resource Center, that stack of books icon, and then all the way at the end, it should be the fourth one from the bottom. But basically what this is doing is creating a kind of like checklist for you with 5 check boxes, so to say, when you're evaluating a stock. So for classic bulls, we like it to have a very bullish or bullish rating with persistent green. Keyword here is persistency. We want to make sure that it's not just bullish for the past day or two, but that it has, at least a couple weeks worth of a bullish power gauge rating. And we also like to see it to be above a rising long-term trend. So we want the long-term trend line to not only be rising, but we want the price bars to be above it as well. And conversely with the bear, it's pretty much the opposite, a very bearish or bearish rating and below a falling long-term trend. In terms of timing, we like to look at a couple of the other technical indicators such as money flow and relative strength, as well as our industry group. We like those to all be strong when we're looking at a classic bull, and for them to be all weak when we're looking at a classic bear. Timing the overbought, oversold indicator is also crucial. As I said, if you're entering a bullish position, you always want to buy on dips. You want to get it when it's oversold. It'll be less expensive. And conversely, for classic bears, you want to get in when it's overbought because you're betting on, if you're shorting a stock or buying a put, you're expecting the price to go down. So you'd want to get it when it's overbought and likely to dip back down again. An important thing to keep in mind this would be for growth, for looking at a classic bull, or even just any type of bullish position, that growth normally does not look like a smooth bell curve upwards. Rather, it follows this Y-cup pattern, right? What we see here is inherent volatility, but that generally there's a pattern of higher highs and higher lows. So say you found a stock that satisfied all the criteria of a classic bull, and you got in at a great time, and then what happens? It goes down right away. This will give you some further reassurance that that's a normal thing. It's a normal occurrence, but that generally it will follow a pattern that looks closely like this. And as you can kind of see here, there's kind of a grayed out stock in the background where we can see this pattern naturally occurring. So they didn't just make this up. It does actually happen in real life. This is our screener, which I'll get into this later in our live demo, but this is going to save you a tremendous amount of time in even finding stocks. What you could do is enter in the criteria that we saw in our Finding Longs and Shorts document. So instead of looking at 500 bullishly rated stocks and trying to figure out which ones had the best relative strength, the strongest industry group, you could actually account for all of that within the screener. And then you can actually generate a list of stocks to add to your watch list. Again, it's just going to save you a tremendous amount of time. If you actually just click this gray button here and click Save List, you can put a name and a date, and you'll be able to save that. And it's something that I do all the time. I try to save my searches with different subscribers. If I'm looking for classic bears or earnings plays, things like that, I always pick the theme and then the date, and I'm able to monitor their performance over time. All right, so let's go through some examples, okay, of classic bears and classic bulls. This is United Healthcare Group. Healthcare has actually been in, a well-performing, outperforming sector. It was actually our bullish pick of the week last week. I believe it was last week. So, we have a couple of reasons to believe that, this would be an example of a classic bull. So let's go through that checklist criteria. First, we saw a very bullish rating. So I see that it's very bullish and it is persistent. If you can see here, it's been outperforming since about February. We see that it's also above a rising long-term trend. So recall that this orange line is going to be our long-term trend line. So the line itself is rising and the price bars are above it as well. We also want to make sure that the other criteria are fulfilled. So strong Chaikin money flow, I do see a significant period of green. Although it is dissipating some, but since it's overbought and it's up towards that top band, I'm not, surprised by that. It might dip back down slightly in the weeks to come, but this very bullish rating, I don't think it would be by that much. Additionally, a strong industry group, strong relative strength. As we can see here, it's been outperforming the market since January, where this, what we call a personality change occurs. So you can see it went from underperforming to outperforming the market, and institutions went from selling to buying. So all good indications for a bullish outlook on this stock. Another interesting fact that Mark outlined in his, or actually I think I looked this up, but United Healthcare announced that they would be withdrawing from the healthcare.gov program in 2017 because they were reporting it as a loss. They were losing money from it. So that might have given some investors some more confidence that they're likely to stand up and be even stronger in the months to come. When we look at bearish stocks, we want to keep that same Wyckoff pattern in mind, except here it would be a pattern of lower highs and lower lows. But again, that same volatility occurs where we see that there will be peaks up and peaks down. But again, overall, lower highs, lower lows in a deteriorating stock. And my example, Solar City, they're still not doing very well, which I don't want to say I'm happy that anything's performing badly, but at the same time, I had picked this earlier this April, and it was in one of my screener searches. I actually entered in some screening criteria for classic bears, and this came up. And I have been going through it this week and monitoring its performance, and I'm happy to report that it does still indeed fulfill all of the criteria for a classic bear. We see very bearish rating with persistent red. It's pretty much been bearish all of this year. It's below a falling long-term trend. Very weak money flow. Pretty much everyone had been selling off after this peak. I assume maybe there was some profit taking, or immediately when it turned bullish, people had kind of a poor outlook for it. Weak relative strength, underperforming the market since January, and also a weak industry group. Interestingly, Elon Musk actually founded this company, and another interesting fact is Jim Chanos, a very famous short seller, picked this stock as a short in the summer of 2015. And usually the methodology goes with him. If he picks a stock to short, you do not want to be invested long in that stock. So kind of cool that he picked that, and they have been performing poorly. But who knows, maybe they can turn it around. Elon Musk definitely talks a big game, especially with Tesla as well. So you never know, I guess, with that. But if it were me, I would not look to open up a bullish position in this stock. All right, so that was our overview of our examples. And now I'm going to go through a quick tour, and then we'll do our live Q&A session. So if you have any questions, please feel free to chat them in, and we can go over them shortly. All right, so if you'd like to search for stocks and ETFs, you would simply go to the upper left-hand corner of the screen, type in the stock or ticker symbol, and then if you want to add it to a watch list, it's kind of covered by the arrow, but there's a plus sign, and you would just click the plus sign. To create watch lists, pretty self-explanatory. You would just click user list and then new list. As I said, you can also save user list from your screener criteria. So if you generate a list and there's 15 stocks and you want to save the whole list, you could do that as well. Our filters and alerts view, what you see here are global filter settings. So this blue funnel icon, you'll see it both located here and in the screener as well. What the filter settings do is they filter out stocks below certain levels of price, liquidity, and capitalization. So you might say that you're not interested in stocks that are very inexpensive or very illiquid, but if you don't care, you can just turn the filter off. You'll know if it's activated if the funnel is highlighted in blue, and you'll know that it's inactive if it's highlighted in gray. So I generally keep mine off just because I want to analyze all those stocks I possibly can, but it's really up to you, and you can edit these preferences as well. Right to the right of that actually is our alerts view. So if you were looking at a particular list, such as the financial spider sector or even one of your individual user lists, clicking that yellow bell symbol will be able to tell you if that list has any component stocks that have generated any buy or sell signals or any other types of alerts. So another type of alert might be an earnings estimate revision, things like that. So these are really short-term things, so it'll tell you if it happened recently. But if you'd like to see if a stock has generated a type of signal over time and you want to analyze how it's performed after generating said signal, you would just click the green and red triangles on the chart itself. A common question we get is, can you see all the signals at the same time? And the answer, unfortunately, for now is no. You would have to switch in between. And another common question that we get is, which is the most important signal? Should you act on it? And the answer to that is also no. What we like to say is signals should rather be calls to attention, not calls to action. So if you'll recall, when we were evaluating stock, we looked at the finding longs and shorts document. If I was evaluating a classic bull and I saw that it fulfilled all of the criteria and that it also was, maybe very oversold, it seems like a good entry point. I might also look to see if it generated a signal as more of a confirmation of an evaluation I already had formed on my own. So if I already thought everything kind of was checked off and it generated an oversold buy signal, it might give me the extra validation that I needed, that I was headed in the right direction. But as you'll see, just generating a signal alone does not necessitate any type of action, and it shouldn't. And clicking the signal view will actually give you an indication of that, right? So sometimes something can generate any type of signal, but the stock may go up or down regardless. So signals are definitely helpful, but you should not make your decisions based on them alone. If you are curious about learning more about the power gauge rating of a particular stock and kind of drilling down further, you would simply click here, this white triangle with the circle around it, to get the power gauge rating for each category. And then if you wanted to drill down even further, you would just click these plus signs so you could see each individual factor. So if financials is really bullish and you want to see within financials which individual factors are more bullish and more bearish respectively, then you would just click these plus signs. I just updated this slide 2 days ago, but this is our new earnings information. And we used to have it where you would click this EPS and you could click show earnings on chart, but in an attempt to make it actually easier, we added this EPS button right here in between the crosshairs and the signals. So if you click this EPS toggle right here, you'll be able to see EPS on the chart. And just for your reference, if it's highlighted in green, that means that they beat the estimate. If it's gray, it means they met the estimate exactly. And if it's in red, it means that they missed the estimate. And you would just hover over this EPS icon to learn more. Finally, to access Portfolio Health Check and Power Gauge reports, you would click this piece of paper in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. What are Portfolio Health Check and Power Gauge reports? I don't talk about them enough, but I definitely should. Pretty much, if you want to get a more in-depth explanation of how a particular list is doing, so you might generate a portfolio health check on the S&P 500, or maybe just this portfolio of stocks that you actually have positions in, you would simply click this button for your selected list, and it'll tell you about the power bar differential, how it's been performing over the past couple of weeks, how it compares to other lists. It'll just really give you a much more in-depth explanation, and this can be saved as a PDF, shared, and printed out as well. Similarly, if you wanted to get, a similar type of in-depth explanation on a particular stock, say you saw Netflix and you wanted to know why we're bearish on it, this will give you a much more detailed view and explanation. And again, you can save it as a PDF, you can email it, you can print it out. I definitely have friends who ask me, okay, hey, Michelle, what does Chaikin think of Netflix or, Chesapeake Energy? So I might print this out and go through it with them. And it's definitely an excellent resource. And back to the beginning, as I said, if you wanted to view a recording of this or learn more about all the functionality of Chaikin, click the stack of books. It's going to be your best friend. Resource Center is where you would find the recordings. User Guide is where you might look to learn more about all of these measurements. Within the Resource Center, there's also an entire document on money flow and how it's calculated. So if you're really curious about that, I highly recommend checking all of this out. There's a tremendous amount of information available to you. And if you'll see here, this is what the resources page looks like. Here's subscriber session recordings. Here's how you register for future sessions. Here's what I talked about earlier, the finding longs and shorts document within Chaikin, and understanding Chaikin money flow, which I just mentioned. And here's the user guide just for your reference. All right. Thank you everyone for listening. I'm going to switch to our live, oops, I don't mean to do that, our live demo, and we can go through questions. All right, let me see here. Power gauge report. Okay, yeah, that's an easy question. How to print the power gauge report. What I would do is say I wanted to generate a power gauge report on Nordstrom. Say I had a friend who was really interested in investing in Nordstrom, and I said, well, it has really bearish power gauge rating. Here's why, and kind of give them an explanation. I would just click this piece of paper in the upper right-hand corner. I would click power gauge report. I could save it as a PDF. So I'm just going to click that, and you'll see. So I clicked PDF. I actually just downloaded twice accidentally, but I would click this. Sorry, that was in my downloads folder. So now I have it here, and I would just click File, Print. So pretty easy. Just make sure that you click the PDF symbol because that'll allow you to download it. So hopefully that answered your question. Let me see. Interested in options. So I really recommend attending our options play session. It occurs on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern, or even just watching some of the videos. But I'll just go through some basic functionality of options play right now. So I would just click this options button here, and the options play module will load. Options Play is actually a separate company that we partner with. So all of the scores that you see here are calculated by them. They're their own proprietary calculations. They take into account risk, probability, things like that. And generally, we like to say that a score above 100 is a good score, and usually they'll put a check mark next to the score that they prefer. But all of this stuff is automatically populated. You'll see the strike prices will be one standard deviation away. So you can modify any of this. So if I clicked modify here, say I wanted to buy a bearish put, but I wanted to have a longer expiration date, I might change it to October 21st, 161 trading days away. You can modify all of these. You can switch to bullish or bearish outlook. You'll usually see that it seems like options play recommends bearish positions, and we actually asked them, and they said, well, statistically, stocks are more likely to have sharp dips down than they are to have sharp spikes up. So that might be why they seem to prefer the bearish strategies more so. But again, I really recommend, this I also recommend before I talk about the option session. But if you actually just click guide right down here, it'll make these blue flags appear, and they'll actually explain everything within the options play module. So everything that you're looking at. I highly recommend doing that. And you can also look at our plain English tab, which will tell you what each strategy is actually doing and the actual potential profits, cost, probability, things like that. But as I said, the options webinar or session that we host, rather, I'll just go through here how you do it. So if you'll recall, here's the stack of books. I'm going to click it. I'm going to click Resource Center. And then under Educational Webinars right here, I see Subscriber Workshop Schedule here. I'm going to click that. And hooray, it brought me to Chaikin Analytics Subscriber Education Workshops. And you'll see each workshop, a brief description, the time, and then you'll be able to register. So if I wanted to register for options, I would click register here, and then I would be able to select the time that works best for me. So, it might be next Tuesday or next Thursday. You would just click it, and you'll be brought to this page. You enter in your first name, last name, email. I'm sure you're all familiar with this because you're obviously on this session. So hopefully that made sense. All right, any other questions? Interested in strategies to recover out of losing positions? That's a very interesting question, actually. So I actually really recommend the site Investopedia, the art of cutting your losses. It's actually a free site, very informative. Mostly like if you're looking to define specific financial terms. Really,
Unmuted.
It can be really helpful, but they actually have a bunch of these articles on how to cut your losses, some links to other strategies, things like that. Investopedia, it's free, it's publicly available. I think they have a lot of really useful information on there. All right, looking at some other questions here. I'm not really familiar with Options House. It could be, so, well, Radio Shack went big, Paxson. Yeah. Interesting questions. I'm not sure. I thought some of these they reported bankruptcy. Yeah. So I don't know why, we cover like 5,000 US equities that are traded in US markets. So if they file for bankruptcy and they're no longer traded, then they wouldn't be available to research. A question about options play, clicking the income tab. Let's see. Well, it worked for me. Not sure what problem you might have been having, but I will say this, if you are having any technical problems with loading options play or really anything else in Chaikin, I do recommend using Google Chrome. It's our preferred browser. We tend to have the least problems with it, and if you actually just go ahead here, I'm going to minimize this. If you open an incognito window within Google Chrome and then open Chaikin Analytics in that incognito window, it usually tends to remedy any technical issue you might be having. All right, a question about JWN. Yeah, Nordstrom, I was looking at that. Oh, I'm already looking at it. The question is, there was a huge money flow, but power gauge was bearish. Why? Good question. Power gauge rating is bearish. I mean, that's going to be your first go-to kind of indicator of the statistical likelihood of how the stock will perform in the next 1 to 6 months. So if we're bearish, we're saying that it's likely to underperform. So recall that a bullishly rated power gauge stock, we want to make sure that all of the factors are satisfied. So we see that it's below a falling long-term trend. It's underperforming the market. It's very bearish. If we wanted to even get a more in-depth, I see, yeah, expert opinions are awful. Their financials are not great. Return on equity seems to be good, but overall very bearish. So yeah, there's a slight increase in money flow, it appears here. It could be that, some institutions bought, if they thought it was a kind of bargain, undervalued stock, but obviously Chaikin has been extremely bearish on it for the past couple months, and that's been an apt prediction as they've not really done so well. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question that, the money flow, it has to be kind of like a collective summary of positive criteria in order for it to be rated bullishly, not just one thing. The power gauge rating, as I said, it's a good indicator of a stock's performance over the next 1 to 6 months. But generally, if you're looking to swing trade, we don't really recommend this for day trading, but for swing trading, definitely a reliable indicator. I mean, I think even here, right, if you had been bearish on, around April as it was overbought and you were looking to either short the stock or buy a put option, and you were looking to enter and exit within a week or so, then you would see that the power gauge rating does hold true. And you can see that with a couple of other examples probably. While I'm looking in energy, that might be a little bit tough, but perhaps in financials. A grouping for just retail. Yes, there is. So that would be XLR, might be in the subsectors. Here we go. So here is retail. As we see, they've been getting crushed. Actually, John Schlitz in his commentary, I think it was yesterday or maybe the day before, he said that retail has really been kind of bringing the whole market sort of down. As we see here, there's 35 bears and 9 bulls. So not a really good differential, but if we look at some of the bears here, some things that you recognize, we have, I think it's Target, Tiffany, Netflix, Nordstrom, not been doing so well. Is this Zoomies? Yeah. Another good question. JWN. It really depends on your time horizon and investment strategy. I think it's generally a good practice to pick one strategy and kind of stick to it. So if you have, a short term time horizon or a long-term time horizon, to kind of stick with it. And important to kind of set your expectations at the outset when you enter a position. So if you did purchase on February 11th, yeah, not necessarily, although I wouldn't short a stock on February 11th when it's really oversold. But even still, here, yeah, you would have made money. Especially since the earnings estimate was bearish and the earnings estimate trend was bearish. All right, are there any other questions before we wrap up? As I said, this session is being recorded. You can watch it later. You can also attend as many sessions as you like. This is a really great opportunity to get in front of us for a live, Q&A session. Whereas, if you email us, you might not get a response right away, but you can absolutely attend these sessions and ask your questions here, as well as our open forum or any other session that we host. So. All right. All those indicators are aftermath. How do you predict the future? So the Chaikin power gauge is a forward-looking measure. So what we're saying when we rate something bullishly or bearishly, when we give it that rating, we're saying this stock is either likely to outperform or underperform the market in the next 1 to 6 months. So it is a forward-looking, future-looking measure. So you're looking to the power gauge to indicate future performance. And as I said, if you want to schedule any type of other session, even a one-on-one session, you can do so in the Resource Center. And it's right here, and you would just schedule a session, and you can schedule one-on-ones right here if you would like to. All right. Thank you again, everyone, for listening. I hope you enjoyed the session. If you have other questions, you can absolutely reach out to support@chaikinanalytics.com, and we will get back to you. And I hope you all have a great weekend.